Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Progressive Talk, Episode 9, with your hosts, Dave and Josh. I am David D. from PRM. That is Joshua from NPV. Josh, how you doing, my friend?
Doing all right. It's been an interesting week for sure.
I know, it's been pretty jam-packed, I tell you. So Marianne Williamson was on The View, and they got into her vaccine stance. I was wondering, what did you think about, one, what did you think about her appearance on The View? And two, what about her vaccine stance? Is it controversial? Has she pivoted? What are your thoughts here?
I think that The View treated her very poorly. They were ganging up on her. They weren't really attempting to hear her out. They are already framing her as a crazy anti-vaxxer. Anybody that's following her knows that she's not an anti-vaxxer. They're treating her pretty much the same way they did Jill Stein in 2016, even though Jill Stein is a doctor, Harvard doctor, and had some questions about thimerosal that later found to be harmful to children and was removed, proving Jill Stein correct. They still framed her, smeared her as an anti-vaxxer. And so they're doing the same thing with Marianne Williamson. Her views aren't about being against vaccines. Her views are questioning the propaganda and the connections, potential conflict of interest between big pharma and research organizations that put out vaccines, and how many of those organizations, doctors don't really sit down and go through all of the potential harms of vaccines. They just give you a shot and that's about it, and send you out the door, and why that has led to a lot of distrust. So she's speaking to that. She's speaking to her understanding why that distrust has developed and what she wants to do about that distrust as president. And they've turned that into her being anti-vaccine.
Yeah, that's really it's really strange how that you even said in one of your videos, they usually cater to Marianne Williamson. They've had her on before. They've been really promoting her in other areas, but it seems like they attacked her, because she's running for president.
Yeah, I think because she is running as a progressive president, and The View is an establishment show with establishment host.
I hear you. I think she was actually misquoted. Was it Meghan McCain was trying to grill her on this vaccine quote, and let's see, Marianne said, quote, calling a mandate on vaccines would be draconian and Orwellian, end quote. So apparently Marianne Williamson said this at some time. And then on The View, Marianne said, quote, I am not anti-vaccine, and I think I misspoke in that one sentence, end quote. So Marianne saying she's defending herself by saying she misspoke when she said that sentence, that vaccines are considered draconian and or Orwellian.
Well, I think we have to really speak to the nuances of this discussion. First off, not all vaccines are mandatory. And so this is what she's speaking to. What she's mainly speaking to is the push to frame people, any person that's speaking out about the concerns they have for vaccinations, the concerns they have for that maybe intruding on personal liberties as being crazy or, wacky people. And that you're shutting down free speech, you're shutting down the discussion about personal liberties, you're shutting down the discussion about, parents' concerns about their children getting vaccines.
Yeah. Their framing was pretty Orwellian, if you want to go there. They totally unloaded on her. But what about a broader conversation with vaccines? Is it, let's just say that she said that and she believed it. I mean, are mandated vaccines draconian or Orwellian when it comes down to the safety of the public? Because there's an issue of being the government not telling us what to do, but in certain contexts, there's certain things we need to do. Like we need to get vaccinated to protect the public.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of fear out there. First off, the measles outbreak is not as large as people are. The media is portraying it to be. Normally there are a handful of measles. It's up to like 700 and something, I think, in the last count, or last year or something like that. And that was one of the high points. And I do think it might be related to some degree of distrust regarding
Okay.
the big pharma, CDC, the FDA, and how they cozy up to one another. And so Americans are questioning that, uh, questioning the government, they're questioning science, they're questioning any big major institutions. They sort of have a she believes that the days of blind faith are over, right?
Right.
And that
Right.
that these government agencies and these large corporations don't really have proper oversight, and that American people need advocacy. They need to be educated. Doctors don't really spend time with the patients and the parents because they're so busy. They're so overwhelmed with making a profit. To me, that's what she's really talking about. Now, if you want to get to the issue as to whether or not we should mandate vaccines, her point of view is it depends on the situation, depends on the vaccine. For example, she was open to maybe considering that measles should be mandated if we're seeing, an increasing outbreak.
Okay.
But we shouldn't just like use this as a sweeping, all vaccines should be mandated, just
Okay. Right.
because argument, particularly given many Americans' concerns. And this is a democracy. It's not a pharmacy or doctor's rule, or
Right.
government rules the American people. Yeah, I think that she's in the right place to address those concerns. She's bringing it to the public's forum for discussion, and she's open to that. She wants to talk about it. She wants to get people to talk about their concerns. That's really going to be the only way we can alleviate some of these, you know, concerns that American people have about vaccines. You don't just push it under the rug and say mandate people. Just like I don't believe bans work on drugs. Same thing. Ban, mandate, they're the same thing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I
What are
mean,
your, what are your what are your thoughts on that? Like, what is your opinion on the
well,
same
yeah.
question?
Yeah. It sounds like some of these are such a no brainers, like with the measles or tuberculosis or things, polio. I mean, just things we've cured, and the things we have the cures for. Okay. There's no reason for these things to make comebacks. Now, you said it was approximately 700 cases. I mean, if you're asking me, one or two is too many, because it's like it should not be thriving if it, within any context if we have the vaccines for them. So it just it's like, wow, how could this be happening? Diseases that we cured 50 years ago or whatever are making comebacks. That just sounds like insanity. I can't really, and then when we talk about freedom of speech, oh, well, you're taking away people's freedom of speech. Well, I would say there's something that has to do with protecting the public, the greater good of the public. I understand free speech, not free speech, but the freedom to have the rights for your own body, whether it's reproductive rights or whatever. But there's a greater risk to the public when these, like the measles and whatever else is making comebacks. That's a huge red flag.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Um, but I also understand that vaccines are not 100%. They don't cover everyone. Just because you get a vaccine for measles or MMRP doesn't mean you still can't get the measles. That's number one. Number two, a
Sure.
lot of people are not aware that measles actually can lead to death, and they have led to death. It's almost 459 of them, uh, just from getting the vaccine. This is from the National Vaccine Information Center. It says, as of November 30th, 2018, there have been more than 93,179 reports of measles vaccine reactions, hospitalizations, injuries, and even death following measles vaccines made to the Federal Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, including 459 related deaths. So I don't think I don't think this is a question of either or. I think this is a question of educating people on and reassuring them that yes, there is the risk that it could lead to death. Yes, it could lead to injury. Yes, it could lead to all of these things. I think that's what she's more speaking to. And she's concerned about the conflict of interest between big money and pharma and research. If you're considering consider the fact that the head of the FDA is a former Monsanto CEO, for example. And Monsanto is clearly shown to put out chemicals that cause cancer, because of money interest. And so this is what she's talking to. But I don't think the question is whether or not vaccines work, but more the question of, are we being honest about the side effects? Are we really just conclusive things like the risks of vaccines? And are doctors really explaining that well to their patients? And are we also overlooking the concerns American people have, given the history of government institutions not being completely reliable?
Well, I think it is something else. It's about public safety. I really believe that, public safety is priority number one here. You have your personal freedom. We have our personal freedom, but that personal freedom can potentially impact other people. And that's when we got to start asking more questions. Should certain things be mandatory because of the possible impact on the public?
So I just want to ask you, we may disagree on how you bring that about. So from your standpoint, the best way to bring people to a place to realize, or get them to, I guess, or encourage people toward vaccines would be to mandate it.
Certain vaccines.
Okay.
I would say certain vaccines, like I said, like the ones that have been cured, polio, tuberculosis, the measles. The big ones, the bigger ones, not a blanket like the top 20. It's kind of like the big ones.
Let's just say for a moment that, which I mean, it's not even hypothetical here. This is real life going on around us right now.
Right.
Understanding that a good percentage of Americans, I think something like 10-15%, it's an all-time high, of Americans currently don't trust vaccines. Do you think it's good policy to just simply mandate them on the ones that you talked about, the top 3 or whatever that have a history of working or eradicating certain illnesses or diseases?
Yeah, I don't even know. I just know that there's a problem. I'm not leaning towards that. I'm not feeling this whole mandate thing, this forcing people to do things. But there's a huge question about, what about the public? What about the public at large and their protection, their concern? That's where the conversation, I think, needs to be. I don't know if I want to mandate. No, I think you got a pretty well deduced, and you pretty much answered my question about having, a more right-leaning or more moderate. It's actually more moderate starting point for UBI, and then as the years go by, automation is going to fill in, and then there might be a greater need for a more left-wing UBI that pays out more money. But I think, freedom dividend is modest, and it's a good starting point.
Okay. And then, so you're saying eventually we can ramp up to a more robust UBI when...
Yes, I think it's okay to start with a more thin UBI, a more skeletal UBI, if you will, and then build on it as time goes by.
Okay. I agree. Definitely will make it a lot more easy to sell, get people behind it from the right side of things, I think, as well. So
that's great. It too. If you think about it, Yang's UBI can be seen as a merge point or as a rallying point for both sides of the political spectrum. So if you start out with a left-wing UBI, you're not going to get anyone from the right, or vice versa. So he's starting off that's pretty much in the middle.
Right. So right wing would probably want to go more for a negative income tax, to, if we're honest with ourselves, and the left, the more this democratic socialists or whatnot would want to go for, as you're saying, a more robust UBI that covers on top of every other program that exists out there. So yeah, I think Yang's UBI is right in the middle, and it's a lot more, accessible to more voters. So yeah. And lastly, I'll just add that this opens the door to further discussions about UBI. It doesn't shut it down to the discussion of a more robust UBI. So,
yep.
Did you hear about the push to try to get Bernie out? Well, it's not really an attempt to get Bernie out of the race, but there's like polls about Bernie. I think it was USA survey. Who would you like to most see drop out of the race? And Bernie was at number 2. And so the mainstream media is essentially trying to erase Bernie Sanders from the race. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think it was about roughly what did they say? That poll said about 1/3 of Americans want Bernie Sanders to drop out of the race.
Yeah,
like that was, I think,
32% or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think things like this is futile, and I think it's only going to invigorate, the base, the progressive base. I think it's only going to animate the thing that they don't want to happen, because we're just seeing this all across mainstream media, whether and they sound desperate, and they are desperate, because Bernie is a legitimate force, and they wouldn't be trying this hard if he wasn't. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they also don't highlight that, people like Biden and Kamala are also, 25%, getting 25% or so of those same people surveyed wanting them to drop out of the race. So they're just highlighting Bernie. And also that same survey said that 40% of the same people asked were excited about Bernie Sanders' campaign. So, but yeah, it's
futile.
Yeah. But I think, like you said, it's a clear indication of who their favorites are, and who they're against, and who we should be supporting. So, really briefly, Dave, we talked about this before, but I think it's important to help people realize or visualize kind of the way the primary will work. What do you think is the best strategy at this point, given that we got 4 or 5 progressive candidates that different people are interested in supporting at this point? How would you go about strategizing to get a progressive to win?
Yeah, I know. I haven't really thought about this too much, but I mean, are you talking in terms of like framing, like how should they frame their arguments or their positions against centrists at large?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give you my thoughts on it, and you can tell me your thoughts. My thoughts are that we should not be attacking each other's progressive candidates at this point. I think it really should be supporting the 5 candidates that we like: Gravel, Gabbard, Sanders, Yang, Williamson. Bring out, highlight, educate public about what they stand for, why we believe it's the way to go for America. Really try to bring them up, their popularity up. That's what we really should be doing as a cohesive group, as a kind of progressive coalition, and not be attacking one another and disparaging or trying to break or dismantle or undermine different campaigns. For example, the way that Sam Cedar or Michael Brooks is trying to do Yang's campaign. They're literally trying to undermine it.
Okay, so yeah, no punching down.
They think that's going to help Bernie Sanders, for example. I think it's not going to help Bernie Sanders in the end, because it's going to create animosity. I think the better approach is to have everyone work together collectively to support 5 main candidates, and then with the goal of getting them to be the final 4 or 5 nominees, but candidates during the primary that's remaining, and all the centrists are booted out. Then may the best man win. I think that's a far better approach than trying to undermine well, I'm a Yanger, so I'm going to undermine Bernie's campaign because that's going to get me votes. Or I'm a Bernie Sanders, so I'm going to undermine Yang's campaign because it's going to get, Yang votes, or vice versa. Did I say the same thing? I think that approach is going to doom the progressives, and none of the progressives are going to end up getting the nomination.
Okay, so you're basically endorsing neutrality amongst the progressives in the field, and if there is an attack to be had, make sure it's at a centrist, basically.
Yes, but one that's honest. Don't create. Don't become Fox News and smear. Centrist candidates.
Policy based.
About it. I would go so far as to say, if you see someone, say you're a Yanger, and you see someone attacking Bernie Sanders and smearing them, you stand up against that.
Okay.
And same thing with Yang. If you're, say you're a Sanders supporter and you see someone attacking Yang unfairly, there's nothing wrong with criticism. Okay, honest criticism, or constructive criticism about, the question you have about Yang's campaign, or where you think he might be a little weak. But let's say that you are a Bernie supporter and you see people attacking Yang, then you go out of your way to say, hey, that's not accurate. You're not representing Bernie fairly in this example, because our goal is to get Bernie, Yang, Gabbard, all of them to be the last 4 or 5 men or women standing. That's our goal. That's the only way to ensure that a progressive is going to win in the end, because then it won't matter, because the last 4 candidates standing are all progressives. So then it's like Christmas, right? It's like
yeah.
Any one of the presents are all, they're like what we wanted for Christmas. So
I love that so much, and that's the approach I've been taking, is just broadening my horizons to all the progressives in the field, and putting my weight behind all of them. I mean, we can isolate. Everyone has a favorite, right? Everyone has a favorite football team. You have a favorite presidential candidate. But the point is, let's broaden our scope. Let's broaden to all the progressives in the field. Let's all be on one side with them, and let's not attack them. And let's stick up for one of them being attacked or whatnot in the comment section. Just progressive unity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about strategy, and
yeah.
At this point, if you think about, even if you're playing Risk, war game, you may team up with someone that was once your enemy, right? To beat a bigger enemy. You team up with them for a while until you take down the uglier enemies, and then at the end, you battle it out after the ugly enemy is wiped off the face of the map, and you battle it out.
Yeah,
that's really the best way to go, in my opinion.
I like that. Let me ask you about Tulsi Gabbard defending Joe Biden. She sent out a tweet. What did she say? Do you have that tweet in front of you? I might have it. So she said, Tulsi said, quote, Biden did not celebrate or end quote. That's just one sentence of it, but basically she's going to bat for Biden that he didn't coddle or celebrate segregationists. He mainly went to work with them, kind of what you were just talking about. Like, there's not people you're going to agree with all the time. You still have to work with them, okay? So it's definitely a question of bipartisanship. My opinion is Tulsi stuck up for Biden in the context of bipartisanship, okay? Not going back to anything that was racist or, segregationist related. I thought she was really going to bat for the bipartisanship angle. What do you think?
Yeah, let me qualify this right up front. I still support Tulsi Gabbard. I support her very strongly. However, in this particular situation, I think she made a mistake. I think for Tulsi Gabbard, it works. I think it works that she believes in diplomacy. She believes in conversation, open conversation. It works for her because she's very refined, and she's very smart, and her agenda is pure. It's progressive policy. Joe Biden, he's a centrist, so he's very willing to placate, very willing to have a weak spine, very willing to give in to big donors, whatever. So the bottom line of what I'm saying is I think Tulsi Gabbard has to learn when you go out of your way to defend someone and when it's not wise to defend someone. I think Joe Biden is not someone worthy of defending, and I think it was just not in any way beneficial to her or anyone. It just was not a tactic worthy of taking on her behalf, in my opinion. But I don't hold any politician to, a perfect standard. They all make mistakes. They all do things. Again, I think this whole purist approach is going to destroy progressives' capacity to win. So I'm willing to overlook that. I don't think it's a big enough thing to say I no longer support Tulsi. But I do think it was a mistake on her behalf.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of what we were just talking about. If you're going to go to bat for your progressive ally, which Joe Biden is not, so she really didn't have to go to bat for him there. So yeah, it's just kind of like, well, don't do that if you don't have to, right?
Exactly. And there's nothing to gain from creating a dialogue with him. I mean, there is something to gain creating a dialogue with Putin or Assad, but with Joe Biden, what do you stand to gain with that? You don't. Am I missing something? What does she stand to gain? What does anyone stand to gain at this point?
Yeah. I mean, she's such a diplomatic person that maybe her boundaries with diplomacy, are kind of hard to define for her. And she's just kind of like that with, people she doesn't need to be.
I'm not saying that's the spirit of what she's doing is in the wrong place. I agree with her, but for her it works. But to project the way she would do things onto Joe Biden, no, they're not the same. Joe Biden is not being diplomatic. He's placating. He's being ingracious. His history shows it. She's diplomatic. She gets things done in the name of progress, in the name of humanity. He doesn't. He gets in the name of corporation. You see, and there's a difference there. And it's nuanced, yes, but there's a clear difference. And Tulsi Gabbard needs to learn that not everybody is in a good place, or maybe they are in a good place, but they don't always have the best picture, for or way to get us there, And I think that it's wrong. It's short-sighted of her to think that she would do it a certain way. Therefore, if Joe Biden just, give him a chance, he'll get it too. No, he's not. He would have already.
Yeah,
that's the case.
I'm with you.
So we were talking about that leading us into Tulsi Gabbard's foreign policy, and I saw an interview recently. I think it was NBC, Big Idea. I think it was Lester Holt had asked her, "How do you mean to stop the military-industrial complex? How are you going to do that? I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, but how are you actually going to do it?" And she talked about the same thing Bernie Sanders talked about, which is she's going to rally the American people, to protest, to get out in droves, that move senators and representatives out of office that don't understand how vitally important this is to the American people. What are your thoughts about that approach? I mean, do you think that's sounds realistic, or do you think that's just sort of naive of her to think that she can do that?
Yeah. This is such new ground. Like it's hard to make predictions. I believe in her will and her fight and her determination. Absolutely. As far as an end result, I just don't know. But it is going to come down to people. If the people want this to happen, we have to try. It's not even about a result. We just have to try and follow her lead to do everything we can against these costly regime change wars. I think we just have to trust her lead and hope she can get it done, because who else is doing this? Who else is attacking the military-industrial complex like Tulsi Gabbard? No.
Certainly, she's the most vocal. Absolutely.
Certainly.
So my question also, do you believe that she is the type of leader that's inspiring enough to get, droves of people, millions of people out in mass to transform the Congress or whatnot, to get her agenda front and center? I mean, I know Bernie Sanders is definitely inspiring. Do you think she has that same kind of, illumination and ability to inspire people to come out?
I do. I do. It's maybe a little more subtle than Bernie, which is more loudly. It's just louder. It's more overt. There's a lot of anger behind it, justified anger. Tulsi is such an excellent speaker, and Bernie speaks with compassion too, but Tulsi really has the compassion down. Like I'm saying it like it's a trait or it's a learned skill or something, and maybe it is. But I just believe her.
To her real life. I think you're speaking to her real life experience. It comes across as authentic, right? Because she's there. She's done that, right? So isn't
100%. It doesn't sound empty.
And so her response to Trump and Iran, what are your thoughts on that? Like her how she responded to Iran?
Oh man, I don't know if I saw. I can't say I have any of those notes in front of me. What do you know? Do you know something?
She was basically pleading to Donald Trump to not get involved with Iran, giving Donald Trump, saying, "Hey, look, you have an opportunity to do the right thing."
That's right.
So this speaks to a bigger question about his interest to getting us into Iran or not. What do you think?
I don't know.
Is?
I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it almost felt like someone was trying to set him up to be a hero. Where it's like, okay, we're going to go to war. Oh, last minute. Oh, wow. My compassion kicked in. And look how great Donald Trump is. Look how great he is. 150 people were going to be killed. He said no. So he, ostensibly saved those people and gets the moniker of hero.
But you had that because I had the same suspicion when it seemed staged. Yeah.
Right. Whatever's going to happen isn't going to be good if John Bolton and Mike Pompeo are involved. It's just a matter of when. It's not even, if it's just when. When's it going to happen? If you have Pompeo and Bolton in there, something bad is going to happen.
What do you think is the reason Donald Trump wanted to get us out of the Iran nuclear agreement? Like, what's his motivation here?
There's nothing in within the realm of logic with why we got out of a deal that said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon for 10 years. We got out of that deal. That defies logic. I don't know. I can't think of one logical reason unless it was something that had to do with going to war or something like that. It only can be because why would you opt out of something so profound as like I can't. Wow. What do you think?
Yeah, the thing comes to my mind is Wesley Clark back in 2001 saying that he saw memos to the effect that they'll be supposedly classified. United States ultimate agenda, I think it's the American New Century for America, 21st Century Agenda for America, was to take out 7 countries over 5 years. Now, of course, it's been far more than 5 years. And Iran was one of those countries. Syria, Libya, Iraq, Sudan, Afghanistan, I think Pakistan, if I'm not mistaken. But 7 of them. And that's, where we are now.
So it's just, so basically Iran is just a country on a bucket list.
Yeah. Just a
country. It explains there's no rationale behind it. I mean, it just sounds like they want to do this because they want to do it. And, I hesitate to go here because it's so crazy in a way, but there is a small group of people, and actually Mike Pompeo is one of them. Mike Pompeo is an end time believing Christian, the book of Revelations. And there's all this stuff that points to Israel and Iran and the Middle East at large. And I really think there's something going on there with, they want to make Bible prophecy happen. I don't know if this is broad, this is flat out conspiracy, but I did read something that I wish I could quote that Mike Pompeo was a right-wing fundamentalist Christian who believes in the end times. That got me thinking in so many directions. Like, I don't like to go there. Of course, it's conspiracy, but.
Well, I mean, I think it's fine. Like, we can talk about it. It doesn't mean that we're saying this is what it is. It's just speculating, just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
I've had those same thoughts. I think most Americans have had the same thoughts. I agree, but I think for me it goes more than just that. Whether he's a believer or not, I think is not really consequential. Let's presuppose he is an end time believer, and his agenda is to get Armageddon going. The end result of that, of course, is a major war in the Middle East, with possible, nuclear warheads being dropped, so forth and so on, just mass killing on a scale we've never witnessed. Now let's take it the other way. Let's say that he isn't an end time believer, that instead he's using the Christian right, using fundamentalist, Islams or Muslims or Jewish to get his agenda, to get support, ratchet up support. Either way, it's the same outcome, right?
Okay, right, yeah. There's probably a more logical deduction that we could lean towards, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the latter one is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I know that some people also talk about petrodollar and how some of these nations have tried to get out of the petrodollar, and that led to their leaders being toppled, regime change. I know that's another argument out there, that this is really about the petrodollar.
Devaluing the petro. I mean, I like to listen to conspiracy theories because it is entertaining, but some of them are plausible and you can have fun with it. But like, I'm someone who grew up around Bible prophecy, and I grew up in it. So, it's like I've always heard these things my whole life, like
okay,
one world government, the rapture, elaborations on the book of Revelations. So, it's actually familiar territory for me, unfortunately, but it's plausible. And it's scary stuff, man. Yeah, we don't need to go further than money, power, and control.
In the comments section, and tell us what you think's really going on. That would be interesting, right? So just hear what commenters have to say, listeners have to say about what they really think's going on. Anything new on the polls?
Well, I had one poll to go over. It was a Change Research poll for the month of June 16th and 17th, and this is from the state of Florida. And I'll just read you the top part because there's a whole bunch. Okay, Biden, 33%, Sanders, 20%, Buttigieg and Warren tied at 15%, Harris, 7%, Andrew Yang and Beto O'Rourke tied at 3%, Cory Booker, 2%, Amy Klobuchar, 2%, and a whole bunch of other people who are at 1% and 0%. So I just see Andrew Yang in there at the top of his range at 3%. He's been going 1% to 3% in the polls. So this is the third poll I've seen Andrew Yang at the top of his range. I saw one from Nevada, South Carolina, and now Florida, where Andrew Yang is at 3%. What are your thoughts here?
Wow, that's good news. Definitely. Yeah, I think that he's making some traction, albeit very slowly. I also I think the same for Tulsi Gabbard. I'm seeing her more, more often show up at 1% and national polls. But yeah, the debates I think is going to make a big difference for both of them, possibly even Marianne Williamson, depending on if she get past some of the things we talked about earlier.
Yeah. This Wednesday and Thursday, don't forget, debates are this week, the 26th and the 27th.
Yeah. So before we go, Dave, let's talk just briefly about, because you brought up a poll just now. If we were to take into account social media and national polls that we know tends to favor older people and conservatives and moderates, let's rank where we think they are. The top 5. Let's do the top 10. Let's rank them. Now, currently, I'm just kind of throw it out there so you have a baseline. Right now, they have, depending on what national poll you look at, but if we're averaging them, right now they have Joe Biden at number 1, something like 30%. They have Bernie Sanders barely at number 2, averaging something like 18-20%. They have Elizabeth Warren sneaking up at number 3, anywhere from like 13 to 16%. They've got number 4, Pete Buttigieg. Number 5, they have Kamala Harris. Number 6, they are placing Cory Booker along with Beto O'Rourke. They're kind of tied between 6 and 7. Number 8, they are putting Klobuchar. Right. And then finally, number 10, they have, people like, and it bounces up and down, changes. People like Kirsten Gillibrand or Michael Bennett or people like that. All right. So if we're taking into account social media, we were trying to do a fair poll. Kind of how would you rank that? How would change things up?
If it was strictly going off of social media, is that what you're saying?
No, if we combine social media with the national polls, the corporate polls, just to kind of get a snapshot of what we think is more of a realistic ranking of where candidates are right now and their support.
Yeah, well, I know one thing. It wouldn't be Biden in the number slot. I would, if you want to throw social media in there, I would put Yang up top.
Okay, so let's say that Yang's number 1 on social media. Okay, so go ahead and list maybe the top 5, like on social media.
Top 5. Okay, I would say Yang number 1. I would say Sanders. Yeah, Sanders number 2. I don't know. Buttigieg sounds top 5. Probably 5. I don't know. Elizabeth Warren. Okay. Tulsi Gabbard would be in the top 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Who would your top 5 be?
Yeah. I do think that Bernie Sanders probably still has number 1.
Okay.
He has got a huge following. He's got literally millions of Twitter followers. But definitely Yang is at number 2, and so I agree with that. He's definitely among the top 3. But he's definitely growing every day. So he's going to he has a high chance of catching up with Bernie Sanders. Number 2, I'm going to give to Tulsi Gabbard, and then Buttigieg, and then probably Warren, and then Buttigieg. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, where would Biden be? Biden would be one of the 1%ers.
Yeah, he's way down there. I think even like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris would be ahead of him. Beto O'Rourke.
Oh,
in terms of social media.
Easily.
I just wanted to congratulate Dave for his channel, Progressive Resistance Media. He's reached 1,000 subscribers. And so now you're at how many views?
I have, well, they're going by watch time minutes. To get monetized, I need to meet 2 criteria. That is 1,000 subscribers, and I need 240,000 minutes of watch time. Currently, okay. I have 215,000 minutes of watch time.
Okay, so we're almost there. So definitely subscribe if you haven't done so already. Dave's content is great. He does a daily report on Andrew Yang news. I've really enjoyed that. So I'm always looking forward to every day that you're posting new news about Andrew Yang. Definitely worth subscribing to.